Hello and welcome. Thank you for popping into my channel. If you are new here, please like and subscribe for me. If you find this content helpful, hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on the next video. Comment below with anything that you need help with or topics you'd like me to cover, and head to my website, consultingninja.tech, to check out the resources section I've put together there. With that out of the way, let's get straight to it. In previous videos, I have shown you how to fetch data from an API. In the next video, we created a NodeJS Express backend to serve some users through a small API, and we hooked that up to the front end, the React front end that we created in the first video. In this video, we are going to hook up Svelte to that backend, and I'm going to go through some of the differences and why I'm absolutely loving this combination of Vite and Svelte. So let's get straight to it. I've already created the package. I'm not going to make you guys have to watch that. Let's get straight to the coding. I called this project 3-4 stack because it's 3/4 of a stack. We have our Express, we have our Node, and we have our Svelte. We're going to wrap up this series with a Mongo video so that we have the entire new stack of MENS, M-E-N-S. Mongo, Express, Node, and Svelte. Sweet. So let's get in here. Inside of our app.svelte, we can get rid of all of this except for our main tag. If you're not familiar with Svelte, it looks a lot like Vue, and I really like it. This makes more sense intuitively to have it like this. We're not going to use these styles. You'll notice that Svelte is pointing that out to me, which is a huge benefit. It tells you when your CSS classes are not used, so you don't have to worry about deleting CSS. You'll know for sure that it's not being used anywhere. Okay, so in our lib folder, let's create a new file. Let's call it users.svelte. Now, we could do all of this right inside of app, but I want to show you guys how Svelte pulls in components because a lot of people are not familiar with Svelte. If you're not, you are missing out because Svelte is sweet. Once you get used to it, you probably are not going to want to go back to programming in React, and I love React, so it's hard for me to say that. So inside here, we don't have to do any of that boilerplate that we would typically have to do inside of a React project. We can literally just start doing whatever we want to do. Whoops. This should be a script. We need a script tag, and you don't need to have your JSX or what you're rendering, the component that you want to render, wrapped in anything special in Svelte components. You just return whatever you want. So let's return a couple of H1s to start. If you've seen that little yellow highlighting, that is one of the awesome parts of Svelte. It tells you if you are doing something that doesn't meet accessibility standards. In this case, it's just telling me, hey, you have an empty tag there. But it also does all of the important ones, missing alts, missing keyboard functionality for people that can't use a mouse, screen reader stuff. It's pretty cool. And we are going to save that. Let's import, just to make sure we have things connected properly. Import users from there. And we'll put that inside of here. Let me also point out that you do not have to have that main tag. That is just proper HTML5 formatting. We're not going to need that either. Get rid of that. And give that a save. And I do already have the development server running, so we can go to localhost 5173 and we can see our text so far, those H1s that we put. This actually should not be. Let's make this say, rather than fetch, let's make this say express. Or we could add both, because technically we're going to be fetching as well. Cool. And that's all there. So then inside of our users file that we're pulling in here, let's get to actually doing some stuff. What we are actually going to wrap this in a div just to make it nice. We do actually need a class of card on here because we're going to be making use of some of the default styling that comes with these templates. If you've not seen how Vite handles conditional rendering, this is going to be super cool for you. Put a bracket and then do # each, and we're going to say users as user, and then bracket user.id. And then we are going to come down here. We're going to do another one. This is another thing that's awesome with Svelte. You can do conditional map blocks. So what I mean by that is we're going to be mapping through all of the users. It's going to be an array of users, and if there's nothing there, it's going to render this other thing instead automatically for us. So it's super, super cool. We are also going to add an additional conditional rendering block so you guys can see what that looks like. We want to make sure that this has also not been set once. And then in here we are going to do some stuff, but let's close that off. And what that looks like is this /if inside of a bracket, and then we're closing off the each like this. Now this is super, super cool. We have our template, and what do we want to render here? Well, we just want to list out all of the users as we get them and say first name, and then our brackets, and user.firstName space last name user.lastname space email, and you guessed it, user.email. It's going to run through all of the users that we get, and it's going to spit out just a paragraph tag that renders out their first name, their last name, and their email. So that's great, right? That's pretty standard stuff. In here it's pretty easy to do. Now, what are we going to conditionally render? Well, if our loading doesn't work. So what we want to do here is just tell the users that the load failed and give them an opportunity to try again. Inside of here, let's add another P and just say failed to load data ... And then under here, let's make a button. Say input type equals button, value equals retry, and then on, this is how clicks are handled. And let's call this fetch data, like that. So this is crazy. This is all of the code that it takes to do this as far as like what we want to render part. Now we just need to add a little bit of functionality, and that's the adding JavaScript to fetch our users. Let's type let users. We're going to initialize an array variable. We're going to initialize an error and call this current error. We're going to assign that to null. So we're initialize that to null. Now let's write a function that does our fetch, and we called it fetch data. So const fetch data. It's assigned an anonymous function, and what we're going to do in here is just fetch. We've set this up to be running on port 8080 so that we don't interfere with any of our React applications. Default for running stuff like this on your local IP is 127.0.0.1. That is not your public IP. That's just like your local IP that it uses to do stuff like this. So get familiar with that IP if you're not. It's used in all kinds of applications. And then we need to .then and take that response and pipe it into this next function. We're going to return response in JSON format. Oops. Then we're going to take that data we can console.log it if you want to check it out. Sometimes that can be helpful, so I'll just tell you, you can put that there. If the data exists, we could also do other checking. We could check to see if the response is in the range that we want. Typically, you're looking for a response of 200, less than 200. Anything less than 200, it's a success. If you've set up a backend before and you're getting a 304, means a not modified. Check out the video that I did on setting up our backend. You can see how to take care of that. And then we need to catch any errors, so dot catch error, send it down the line. Let's assign current error, and let's just say error. We don't really care what the error is. This is not going to get like server errors. This basically is only going to trigger if your network's down or the server's down. And then we'll just console.log whatever error comes back. Error fetching users. And then a comma and error. Cool. Down here, this is yelling at me, and I just glanced down because I have this in brackets, and it should not be brackets, it should be parentheses. This is kind of like a React key. It's optional in Svelte, but it's helpful to the engine, to the compiler. Now, we have our function done that's going to fetch that data. Now, this is where things with Svelte get super sweet. In React, in order to, let's say that when a user first loads this component, they come to our page and this component is running somewhere on our site. Hang on just a moment. I realize I did not close off this input tag. So let's close that off. Back to what I was saying. Let's say that this component is running somewhere on our site and we want it to automatically try to fetch this data right when the component loads. Well, in React, I've done that in our React component, in this other React component. This is what you basically have to do. You have to put it in a use effect, do some conditionals where if it's not set or if the length or whatever, then you run the function. It's still going to run several times anyway because that's just the way React 18 plus works. Super annoying. Take advantage of the way that Svelte works. It only re-renders on like resetting a variable. So this is super cool. So what are we going to do? I'm going to create this immediately invoked function expression. It's just a function that you immediately run, okay? And in here, I'm just going to run fetch data and then run that function. So I'm just wrapping, I'm wrapping our fetch data inside of this immediately invoked function. So when this component first comes through, it's going to create this function and then immediately run it. And then all of our conditional rendering is going to kick in. So if it's successful, it's going to render out all of those users. If it's not, then it's going to render out this button saying, hey, we failed to load that data. Do you want to retry? So let's double check our app, make sure that that has been imported properly here. Let's go check it out. Here we have what I'm talking about. I don't have the backend running. As soon as you hit refresh, I'll force it to try again. You can see it failed to load. And you can hit retry and it will continue to try to fetch that data from the back. As soon as I turn that backend server on, so now we have our backend API up and running, I can hit that retry button and you can see that the data loads exactly how we want it to. And if I were to force a refresh on this, you can see that the first time the component loads, since the server is running, the call is successful, the data loads, everything goes off without a hitch. So how cool is Svelte, man? I mean, that's so sweet. You can't do anything this easy in React. I mean, you just can't. Look at how much fewer lines of code. In fact, so much less code that I wanted to show you guys something. I found this character counter, copied and pasted all of the code that does this front end work in Svelte, and this is the end result of it. It took 35 lines of code, 72 words involved, and 784 characters. To do the exact same functionality in React took 45 lines, 95 words, and 1,219 characters. And we're not even talking about the performance differences. We're only talking about the amount of code that you, as a developer, have to write in order to make this happen. Well, I don't know. I'm like so gung-ho about Svelte right now. We'll see where things continue to go with that. But I'm going to continue working with Svelte, and I'm going to continue showing you guys Svelte because I really believe in it. I hope that you guys have found this video helpful. Stay tuned for the next one because we are going to hook all of this up, the React version, the Svelte version, the Express, all of that up to a MongoDB. If you liked this, please subscribe, hit that like button, and as always, have a great day.